start, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Ariel. Dobro večer. That's the only Serbian you're going to get out of me, for the evening. My name is Paul Gross. I'm a senior fellow here at the Milan Koljanin Heritage Center in Jerusalem. It's my great pleasure to welcome you, those of you here in person and watching us on Zoom. And it's my special pleasure in particular to welcome His Eminence Aristaphos from the number 2 in the Greek Patriarchy and His Excellency Duško Kovačević, the ambassador from Bosnia and Herzegovina. We will soon be joined by some more honored guests, but in the meantime, I'll continue with the event. So we're here to hear about a really important new book, a new collection of critical documentation of the crimes committed in the former independent state of Croatia. Not really independent, but that was the name. The independent state of Croatia during the Second World War, the crimes committed by the Ustasha, the allies of the Nazis, crimes committed against Serbs, Jews, and Roma. And we have a fantastic panel of experts to give us presentations on particular aspects of that. I'll just say just a little contemporary point before I introduce our speakers, that I think today Israelis and those watching around the world who care about Israel will be very aware that the word genocide has taken on a much broader meaning than it initially had, to encompass all kinds of things which didn't previously fit the definition of genocide, usually specifically to fit things that Israel does. So I think it's ever more important that we remember actual genocide when it was committed, to remember, to learn from it. And I'm really honored to have so many incredible speakers with us here today to talk about that and to talk about this important book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce, I think, each speaker in turn. They will come up here and give their presentation. And then once everyone has spoken, there'll be an opportunity for you here in our audience to ask questions. So we're going to start with Dr. Kiril Feferman, the former former senior lecturer in the Department of Jewish Studies at the Russian State University of Humanities, Director of Educational Research at the Russian Research and Educational Holocaust Center in Moscow, and current head of the Holocaust History Center at Ariel University. He has authored several books, and he'll be addressing here the subject of the Holocaust and genocide in Yugoslavia during World War II in European perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks a lot for just, thank you for the distinguished guests, religious leaders and ambassadors, and everyone who found time to come here. Of course, it's very difficult for someone who was not born in this region to tell something extremely new, something that no one was aware about regarding the Holocaust and the genocide in Yugoslavia during World War II. So my task is something that I've been doing for many years, is to try to put the things in comparative perspective, to try to understand to what extent what was transpiring in that space was unique, and to what extent there were some parallels elsewhere in German-dominated Europe. So, and like Paul said, I'm an old-fashioned scholar, who uses the term genocide very sparingly, mainly when it did take place. In the old classical context and according to the old definition. So we basically in occupied Yugoslavia or German-dominated Yugoslavia, even though it was divided between several other actors and they should be given their due for what they did, the processes that were taking place there were unique in very many respects. Most specifically, first of all, it was initially, from the German perspective, it was not designed as an ideological crusade. As you well know, things could have played out differently if the Yugoslavian government, at least this was the German proposal, agreed to the German dictate. It didn't happen, and the result was the brutal war and bombardment of Belgrade and the brutal occupation. So, in this sense, viewed from this respect, at least on paper, Germany was ready to be more flexible regarding the way it would manage its dominated the territories it was going to dominate in Yugoslavia, and it had to share. Found it expedient to share the spoils of the war with other junior partners, and there were so many countries that took part and in brutal occupation and mismanagement and atrocities in this space that we should remember them, starting from Hungary to Bulgaria, and of course probably to a lesser extent Italy, but it was also there very brutal country. And of course a unique factor, an element that did not exist before the war, was the independent state of Croatia. And initially, from the German perspective, if we are trying to view it, from a pan-European perspective, Germany, as you well know, was not a particularly generous country regarding the distribution of this of the spoils of the war, including these, given territories it conquered. So on paper, it was not supposed. Germany was not supposed to go to any length to satisfy aspirations of its allies, or especially junior allies. And yet, in Yugoslavia, something unique took place over time for a variety of reasons. For example, there was a partisan war, very serious partisan uprising that morphed into partisan war that never ended. In fact, Germany did not have enough manpower of its own. So it highly appreciated a contribution, especially from local experts who would help Germans who knew the territory, who would help them, what they call, to pacify this uprising. And it is where the Croatia was able to position itself as a very valuable partner, even though it was a junior partner in this in dealing with what remained of former Yugoslavia. And paradoxically, I would say, contrary to anything else, at least according to my judgment, that took place in German-dominated Europe, it was such a junior partner what was in a position to convince the Germans to pursue its own policy. Even though, as you well know, I mean, I mean this genocide, ethnic cleansing of Serbs in Croatia, in the territory that and the NDH took over. So even though it definitely ran contrary to the German designs, they realized it was counterproductive because such a brutal pacification of the Serbian population was would inevitably lead to a higher, to an uprising of on a larger scale. So and yet, the Croatian contribution was valued to such extent that the Germans let it happen, and eventually, of course, they made their own contribution. But I would say, regarding the German brutality, regarding the ways they dealt with the population in the conquered territories in Eastern Europe, anywhere actually, where there was a partisan movement, there was no surprise. In this sense, the German army, especially, was the major actor in pacifying Yugoslavia, pacifying Eastern Europe. It behaved more or less in the same way anywhere. And in this sense, I would say it really doesn't come to us as a surprise. What makes the Yugoslavian picture more complicated is the presence of very many countries with competing agendas. And some of them had, I would say, more moderate effect on the ways, actually, like Italy, for example, the most important case, which, to some extent depends on the timing. It was the place where Serbs and Jews could be rescued. Of course, it depended on the timing, but still, very important. Other countries, like Hungary, very brutal. It was, on a par with what the Germans did. And but this, I would say, it is again the Hungarian example is not so unique to anyone who knows how the Hungarian army behaved in Eastern Europe. And probably what makes the Bulgarians should be also given credit in this respect, because they were also very brutal in the territory, in the part of the Yugoslavia that they took over. Now, what makes the Yugoslavian case unique is this non-stop guerrilla warfare that actually started from the very beginning of the German occupation after the dismantlement of Yugoslavia. And as a result, the Germans, contrary, of course, to their own designs, had to invest so many resources to this war. And they were short of manpower. They needed these soldiers in the Eastern Front, and they couldn't send them. And as a result, it brought about the radicalization of the German policy, because they really, they were eager to do away with the uprising as soon as possible, because these soldiers had to be sent to fight in the Eastern Front, and they couldn't do it. And so the result was this cumulative radicalization, and where the German army, the Wehrmacht, were the major actor. And of course, they were followed by SS, and there was no surprise. And this pattern of cumulative radicalization, again, is familiar to anyone who follows the development of these German organizations. So, how many minutes? Yes. One more thing we should keep in mind while dealing with Yugoslavia, of course, for the German imperial planners, it was a sort of an ideal laboratory, because the country was made up of so many ethnicities and religious groups. As you well know, not all of them were at peace with each other. And for the German approach was definitely important from, what we call divide et impera. And their approach, even though it may sound unique, in the Yugoslavian history, but it was not unique for any imperial planner. The idea was to support the second most important nation in the country, which was underprivileged under the previous regime, and of course to constrain the most numerous nation. And they pursued more or less the same policy in other countries and in other occupied territories, more specifically in the Soviet space. So it makes sense, and this explains, how the German planners and those who carried out these policies operated. And to sum up this long story of brutalities, which, of course, I didn't mention the Jewish Holocaust also, but it was more or less similar to what took place with Jews anywhere in German-dominated areas. There were local collaborators, again, mainly associated with this new political entity and the age. But also, other people in the German payroll. But there were many areas where the Germans were unable to get, more specifically those controlled by both competing partisan factions. And so this was the actually century for the Jews, a very unique development anywhere in German-dominated Europe. And to sum up, this is a story where the pattern of the genocide and the Holocaust seems to be very similar to what took place in other region, which was also characterized by extreme brutality and cumulative radicalization, namely Eastern Europe, or more broadly, the occupied Soviet territories. And the same perpetrators, the same mode of operation, and again, this significant number of local collaborators, but there are also local helpers. On this happy note, thank you very much. I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Feferman. We'll be continuing with Dr. Nebojša Kuzmanović, Director of the Archives of Vojvodina. He has a long and distinguished record as an expert in Serbian literature. He's written hundreds of scholarly articles and over 20 books. He's also received national and regional awards for his service to Serbian culture and national identity. And he'll be speaking about the source of the documents in the book and their significance. And he's going to be speaking in Serbian and will be translated by Dr. Eliezer Papo from Ben Gurion University. So thank you for joining us.
Microphone? Yeah. Okay.
Vaša visoka preosveštenstva, Vaša ekscelencijo,
Your Eminences, Your Excellency,
dragi kolege, prijatelji Srbije,
dear colleagues and friends from Serbia,
kolege i prijatelji iz Izraela, iz izraelskih institucija,
colleagues and friends from Israel and from Israeli institutions,
gospodine Paul,
Mr. Paul,
gospodine Zuroff,
Mr. Zuroff,
Aleksandre,
Alexander.
Najveća zahvalnost Aleksandru i gospodinu Zurofu što su pomogli da napravimo ovaj događaj, naravno i Centru Menachem Begin, i da predstavimo ovu priču, odnosno istinu o stradanju Srba, Jevreja i Roma u Drugom svjetskom ratu u nezavisnoj državi Hrvatskoj.
I would like to thank those two, to Mr. Zuroff and Mr. Nikolić, and to the Heritage Center of Menachem Begin for making possible this evening in which we present the suffering of the Serbs, Jews, and Roma in the concentration camp of Jasenovac. So thank you all.
Dva su razloga zašto sam ja došao u Izrael ovih dana.
There are two reasons why I came to Israel these days.
Da ispričamo istinu o stradanju ljudi u nezavisnoj državi Hrvatskoj.
First of all, to tell the truth about the sufferings of the people in the Independent State of Croatia.
A drugi razlog je potpuno ličan.
And the other reason, or the second reason, is totally personal.
Ja sam želeo da budem sa vama i jedva sam dočekao da dođem u Izrael među jevrejski narod kada vam je teško i kada bombe padaju.
I wanted to be with the Jewish people at this very hard moment, international situation, war and bombs and everything.
Jer smatram da je lako biti prijatelj u dobru, dakle kada se jede i pije.
I believe it's very easy to be someone's friends when everything is going all right and when everybody is only eating and drinking.
A nije lako biti prijatelj kada su vam životi ugroženi ili vašoj deci ili vašim porodicima.
But it's not as easy to be someone's friends when his life and the life of his family members is under a big question mark.
I previše sam star da bih bio demagog ili patetičan.
I'm too old to deal with demagogy or to be pathetic.
nego naprotiv. Smatram da treba svedočiti istinu, naročito u ovim vremenima koja su veoma teška i za vaš narod i za naš srpski narod.
Rather, I firmly believe that it's important to attest the truth in these difficult times, difficult for Serbs as well for the Jews as well for the Serbs.
Skoro svi Srbi znaju mnogo toga o jevrejskom narodu i o izraelskoj državi.
Most of the Serbs know many things about the Jews in general and the state of Israel in particular.
Hiljadugodišnje stradanje jevrejskog naroda, a posebno Holocaust i 6 miliona ubijenih Jevreja od strane nacističkog zločinačkog režima je poznat svakom Srbinu.
Millennial suffering of the Jewish people and especially the Holocaust and what happened at the hands of the German regime is known to every single Serb on the planet.
I naš narod osjeća poštovanje za vaše žrtve.
Our people feels deep sympathies and respect for your sacrifices, for your victims.
Ja i mi smo došli da zamolimo i da se vi upoznate sa žrtvama srpskog naroda.
On the other side, we would like to introduce to you the suffering on the other side, the sufferings of the Serbian people.
U ovoj knjizi ne nalazi se ni mitologija, ni politička priča, ni propaganda, nego se nalazi istina.
This book is not about mythology or political propaganda. It's simply about the truth.
A ta istina je zasnovana na arhivskim dokumentima.
This truth is based on archival documents.
Specifičnost ovih dokumenata što oni nisu nastali posle Drugog svjetskog rata kada pobednik piše istoriju.
So we are talking about documents, not about the interpretation of the history done by the winners after the war, but rather of historic documents produced during the war itself.
I kada ljudi koji daju izjave onako kako vlast od njih očekuje.
After the war, when people give their statements and testimonies, many a time they do it in accordance with what the people in power expect from them.
Ovo su dokumenti koji su nastali u toku Drugog svjetskog rata, 41. i 42. godine.
However, though, these are the documents which were produced during the war, early in the war, in 1941 and 1942.
Tu se nalazi 165 arhivskih dokumenta i 62 fotografije.
There are 165 archival documents and 65 photographs.
Ta dokumenta su stvorili nemački vojno-obavještajni i policijski organi u realnom vremenu.
These documents were produced by German intelligence forces, yes, by German intelligence forces during the early days of the war.
Dakle, nemački organi su beležili zločine koji su se dešavali i koji su činili Ustaše i hrvatske Ustaše nad Srbima, Jevrejima i Romima.
So it's German officials who attested to the atrocities done by the Ustasha against the Serbs, the Jews and the Roma.
Neke od najdrastičnijih stvari su ove fotografije koje svedoče o ubijenim ljudima u selu Gudovac kod Bjelovara.
Some of the most dramatic testimonies in this book are these photographs of children which were killed in the village of Kudovo next to Bjelovar, small city.
28. i 29. aprila, dakle 15 dana posle osnivanja nezavisne Hrvatske, Ustaše su ubile 201 civila u selu Gudovac kod Bjelovara.
So on 28 and 29 of April, basically 15 days after the beginning of the war, Ustashas have already managed to kill 201 civilians in the village of Budovac next to Bjelovar.
I to su originalne fotografije i originalna arhivska izveštaja.
So these photographs are original photographs and also the report is the original report submitted by German officials.
Među tim dokumentima imamo i dokumenta koja se odnose na stradanje Jevreja na području Brčkog i na još nekim mestima na području tadašnje nezavisne države Hrvatske.
Amongst these, we also have some documents included about the suffering of the Jews in the city of Brčko and few other places in the independent state of Croatia of the time.
Tu ima mnogo dokumenta, a ovdje su izdvojeno 165. Ukupno u tom dosjeu nekog čovjeka koji se zvao Slavko Odić postoji 665 dokumenta.
In the original portfolio prepared by the man called Slavko Odić, there were 660 something documents, but they included in this book 165.
I kao što gospodin Zuroff i njegov prethodnik Simon Wiesenthal, i kao što vi Jevreji imate istoriju u traganju za dokumentima, traganju za istinom, tako evo i ovo je jedan od primjera da i mi Srbi imamo takvu priču.
So the same way the Jews have had their Simon Wiesenthal and Efraim Zuroff and other experts trying to collect all the documents, the Serbs are also doing the same thing.
Šta je tu zanimljivo? Više od 70 godina ova su dokumenta bila potpuno nepoznata.
What's interesting is that for many decades these documents were totally unknown.
Taj Slavko Odić je bio partizanski komandant, oficir OZNE službe bezbednosti i on je i kao školovan čovjek krenuo da istražuje neke vojne operacije, Drvar i tako dalje i taj dokumenta iznao iz arhiva i držao kod sebe u kući 50 godina.
Slavko Odić, who was actually a partisan fighter and an officer of Yugoslav army, as well as an officer of Yugoslav intelligence service, he started early in the war to collect documents, and then he took out from the archive things which had to do with military operations around Drvar, and besides other things, also the documents included in this folder, and he kept them at his home for the next 50 years.
I kada je on umro 2008. godine,
in 2008, when he passed away,
neki čovjek, advokat po struci, je kupio tu zgradu gdje je bio Slavko Odić i krenuo da je sruši, da napravi novu zgradu.
A man, lawyer by profession, bought the edifice or the house in which Slavko Odić lived before, and he wanted actually to bring it down and to build another house on the place. And then this is when the folder was discovered.
I pre nego što je srušio, on je vidio neke kutije sa papirima i ipak nije želeo da to baci kao što to ljudi rade.
So before they brought the house down, he saw some boxes with papers, and instead of just throwing them away as people usually do, he became interested in the stuff contained in those boxes and
I doneo je nama u arhiv Vojvodine i ponudio da mi to otkupimo.
So he brought them to the archive of Vojvodina, and he offered us to buy out these boxes with documents.
I mi smo to otkupili za 500 €.
And we bought the box for 500 euros.
I onda je to stajalo nekih 10 godina i kada je mene država postavila za rukovoditelja, za direktora 2018.
For the next 10 years, these boxes were in the archive of Vojvodina, but they were not touched. And then when he became the director of the archive of Vojvodina, he was appointed. He started looking what's there to be done, and besides other things, there was this box.
Ja sam ulogu nisam shvatio samo kao ulogu direktora da rukovodim, nego sam malo da istražujem, što bi Srbi rekli, da cunjam po depoima i pronašao sam te papire.
I didn't understand my role as a role of a manager only, so I started looking around on the premises and investigating what could be done in future. And between other things, I found the said box.
I pitao sam kolege, pa kakvi su ovi dokumenti? Oni su rekli, pa ne znam to nešto.
So I asked the colleagues what these documents are all about, and they told me, well, we don't know, it's documents.
Ali postoje ljudi koji imaju intuiciju. Ja mislim da sam ja jedan od tih.
There are people who have intuition. He believes he is one of them.
I pokrenuli smo tu priču.
So we started with that story.
I pogledali dokumenta, preveli ih sa njemačkog jezika na srpski, objavili knjigu na srpskom.
We looked into the documents, we translated the documents from German to Serbian, we published the book in Serbian.
I onda je to malo krenulo po medijima, Srbija, ali i druge države, Hrvatska, Bosna i Hercegovina.
So it brought a lot of attention in media, first of all in Serbia, but also in Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as in Croatia.
I jednog dana se javlja neki čovjek, sekretarica kaže, traži vas neki čovjek, neki advokat.
So one day somebody called to the office and the secretary told me, well, there is a man looking for you.
I javlja se taj advokat koji nam je prodao tamo.
And it was the lawyer who sold us the documents.
I kaže, direktor, ja imam još tih dokumenata, ali mene je sramota.
And he tells me, listen, director, I have more of those documents, but I'm ashamed.
Ja kažem, zašto te je sramota? Pa kaže, zato što sam vam prodao, ja sad želim da vam poklonim.
Well, now I'm ashamed because originally I sold you the documents, and now I would like the rest of the documents to donate to archival.
Tako da se advokat pokajao, što nije uobičajena stvar.
So it's one of the rare occasions where a lawyer repented.
Neka oprosta ako ima. Deo tog dosija je u Banja Luci, deo je kod nas, imamo jednu celinu.
So part of this portfolio is in Banja Luka and part is at Archive of Vojvodina. But all in all, we have all of it. When we put those two parts together, we have all of it.
I onda smo mi želeli da to prevedemo na engleski, kako bismo i druge ljude, ne samo na Balkanu, nego evo, u Izraelu, u Europi i svijetu upoznali sa ovim dokumentima i sa stradanjem Srba, Jevreja i Roma u nezavisnoj državi, Ustaškoj nezavisnoj državi Hrvatskoj.
That's how and when we decided to translate these documents into English in order to introduce people outside of Serbia and the Balkans with the sufferings of the Serbs, Jews and Roma in the Independent State of Croatia.
I privodim kraju. U našem arhivu ima 45 miliona dokumenta.
I'm getting to the end of my presentation. In our archive, we possess like 45 million of documents.
Najstariji dokument je iz 12. veka.
The oldest amongst them is from 12th century.
To je jedan bogoslužbeni spis sa područja Češke, Praga na latinskom jeziku.
It's a liturgical text from in Latin language from Bohemia, from Czechoslovakia.
Ali ova dokumenta su najznačajnija po meni dokumenta koju mi imamo.
But these documents related to the sufferings of the Serbs, Jews and Roma in the Independent State of Croatia are the most valuable thing we have in our archive.
I još jedna važna činjenica, naš arhiv za 10 dana slavi 100 godina postoje.
There is no historical and political entity known as the United States of Russia.
Additional information I would like to share. Sljedećeg mjeseca ili sljedećeg godine?
19. maja.
On 19th of May, our archive is celebrating its 100-year anniversary.
Kod nas na Balkanu ni države ne traju 30-50 godina kao ustanove.
In the Balkans, many a time, even the states don't endure more, and here you have institutions which endures for more than 100 years.
Tako da je to velika privilegija.
So it's a great privilege.
Ali zašto je ovo naglašeno?
Why I'm putting an accent on this?
Nego da bismo se gordili, nego
Not in order, to come out arrogant, but rather
nego da vam kažem da učimo od najboljih, a najbolji je Yad Vashem.
but rather to help to show you that we are learning from the best, and the best is certainly Yad Vashem.
I gospodin Gedalja i njegova ekipa iz biblioteke, tamo univerzitetske koji smo bili.
And also Mr. Gedalia and his colleagues from the library, with which we had a lot of collaboration.
Moment, stigo nam je ministar, zahvaljujem, ministar.
A moment, a minister just arrived.
Gospodine ministre, hvala vam mnogo što ste došli i odvojili naše promociju.
Well, he was turning to the minister and thanking him for coming to the promotion of the book.
Dakle, naša ustanova, Arhiv Vojvodine, koja je regionalna ustanova u Srbiji, arhiv u Srbiji,
Our institution, which is a regional archive of the region called Vojvodina,
pored ostalih poslova i dokumenata, se posebno bavi ovim dokumentima o stradanju ljudi u Drugom svjetskom ratu, dakle Srba, Jevreja i Roma.
besides other projects and documents, is putting a strong emphasis on this particular project, the sufferings of Serbs, Jews and Roma in the Independent State of Croatia.
I kao što možete da naslutite iz mog razgovora, ovo mi ne shvatamo kao posao, nego kao misiju.
As you can imagine, we don't understand this thing as a job, but rather as a mission.
Jer ja sa ovih svojih 65 godina smatram da ljudi treba da preskoče horizont očekivanja i da urade više nego što je to moguće u datim okolnostima.
From the age of my 65 years, I believe that people should cross the gap of expectations and do more than what their description of their job requires.
I kao što naš predsjednik države ili ministar spoljnih poslova zaista rade više nego što se to od njih očekuje.
So the same way the president of our government, our minister of foreign affairs are doing more than they are expected to.
Naš ministar je bio sa vašim predsjednikom, sa vašim premijerom i sa predsjednikom Kneseta i govorio je na ivritu. To je za mene fenomenalna stvar. Ja vam se zahvaljujem kao građanin Srbije.
Our minister was here and he had talks with the prime minister, with the president of the country, and with the speaker of the Knesset. And in each of those occasions, he spoke fluent Hebrew, for which I'm grateful to him as a citizen of Serbia.
I pošto mogu da anticipiram stvari, ovo je zaista istorijska misija i posao. Hvala vam.
So, being the fact that I had intuition that I spoke about before, I anticipate that it's historic.
Tako i mi, obični ljudi, neki direktori, moramo da uradimo više nego što se od nas očekuje. I ovo je primjer toga.
The same way, we, normal people, regular people, directors of institutions and archives, need to do more than expected, and this is one of such examples.
I na kraju velika zahvalnost vladiki Jovanu Patračku Slavonskom.
Special thanks to His Eminence, the Bishop of Pakrac and Slavonia, Jovan.
Koji je pomogao i dao blagoslov da se ova knjiga objavi, a slike, odnosno fotografije, su fotografije ikona koje su njegove monahinje naslikale. Monahinja Marija je naslikala ove ikone i mi smo ih stavili na
which helped the publishing of this book and also gave his blessings for it. And as you can see, some of the illustrations are icons which were produced, or pictures. Pictures produced by the nuns of the Jasenovac monastery.
I u zaključku, naš zadatak je, a verujem i drugih ljudi u drugim oblastima,
To conclude, our mission, and I believe mission of other people in other fields, is
da se borimo za spoznaju istine,
to fight for the recognition of the truth,
kako bismo došli do pravde,
in order to reach justice,
a na temelju spoznaje pravde imali sposobnost oprosta,
and the reaching of justice should enable us to forgive.
I na kraju ušli u polje ljubavi koje će nam omogućiti da stvaramo bolje društvo nego što su to nama ostavili naši očevi.
Which should make it possible for us to enter the field of love, where we could create a world better than the one we inherited from our fathers.
A sve to radimo da bi naša deca, to je najvažnije, znali da ni Jevreji, ni Srbi nisu ružni i loši ljudi.
And all of this we do in order that our kids and your kids, that all our kids should know that Jews and Serbs are not bad people.
Shalom.
Shalom. At present,
Ova knjiga sada.
this book is for Paul,
USB na kome su svi ovi dokumenti.
and this is your USB, which contains all the documents that we talked about.
I na kraju, kao iznenađenje, ova knjiga o stradanju Jevreja
And at the end,
Od Nemaca i od Mađara u Drugom svjetskom.
additional present, a book which summarizes the sufferings of Jews in Bačka, part of Vojvodina, at hands of German and Hungarian forces.
Krajem Drugog svjetskog rata, nemački i mađarski fašisti su 2000 novosadskih Jevreja odveli u logore.
In the second half of the Second World War, the German and Hungarian fascists took like 2,000 Jews from Novi Sad to concentration camps.
I od tih ljudi svega se 200 ljudi vratilo u Srbiju.
Only 200 of them returned to Yugoslavia.
Među ovim popisima, spiskovima koje mi čuvamo u arhivu Vojvodine,
Between the lists preserved in the archive of Vojvodina,
nalaze se i podaci o ocu jednog vašeg političara, a to je Jair Lapid.
there are also documents about the father of one of Israeli politicians, namely Yair Lapid.
I mi vam poklonjamo knjigu sa tim dokumentima i ovima koji su...
Here is the book with those documents, and this is a present for the summer.
Well, firstly, I gratefully accept these on behalf of the Menachem Begin Heritage Center, and they will go in our library. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Dr. Nebojša Kuzmanović. That was wonderful. And thank you also, Dr. Eliezer Papo, for so wonderfully translating that for those of us whose Serbian isn't quite up to scratch. So I appreciate that very much. For those of you watching on Zoom, you may have cottoned on that we were briefly interrupted, but honored to be interrupted by His Excellency Marko Đurić, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Serbia, who has visited us as part of his visit to the State of Israel. Also, His Excellency Miroljub Petrović, Ambassador of the Republic of Serbia, and Ms. Tijana Borisavljević, Chief of the Office of the Minister, Republic of Serbia, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I apologize if I completely butchered your name. I would like to, I'd be honored to welcome the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Marko Đurić, to say a few words. Thank you so much.
Your Grace, Your Excellencies, honored and distinguished hosts from the Menachem Begin Center, it is a great honor for me to be here with you this evening. And indeed, it's a great honor to be in Jerusalem, eternal Jerusalem, which is a place where so many things started, and a place which is for the past, well, I would say more than 100 years, certainly since the fight for the re-establishing of the State of Israel, also a conscience of not just one nation, but I would say a conscience of mankind, because in this city, institutions that preserve the memory of one of the deepest falls of humanity work and operate. And I would like to say just a couple of words about what we have gathered for tonight. It is both an honor and a solemn responsibility to address you on the occasion of the presentation of the book, The Ustasha Atrocities, a collection of documents from 1941 to 1942, which I believe is a work of profound historic importance and enduring moral weight. This publication is the result of dedicated and meticulous scholarly efforts, drawing upon primary archival sources, as well as testimonies of survivors. It offers a comprehensive and unvarnished account of the crimes committed during the existence of the so-called Independent State of Croatia. It sheds a light on a system of persecution and extermination that targeted with brutal consistency and precision the Serbian, Jewish, and Roma populations. For both the Serbian and Jewish peoples, the Second World War represents one of the darkest chapters in our shared history. Entire communities were destroyed, families were torn apart, and lives extinguished in ways that defy comprehension. The suffering endured is not only a matter of national remembrance, it is a part of the broader human story of the Holocaust and genocide. In this sense, our histories of the Serbian and Jewish people are deeply intertwined, bound by tragedy, but also by a shared commitment to preserving memory and dignity. This book is therefore more than a collection of documents. It is a voice for those who can no longer speak. It is a testament to the victims and a warning to future generations. By presenting well-documented factual evidence, it is contributing to a clearer and more accurate understanding of the past. We are living in a time when historical revisionism and the resurgence of extremist ideologies continues to challenge established facts. Across different parts of the world, we witness the re-emergence of narratives that seek to justify or reinterpret crimes of the past. This is also true in the Balkans, where persistence of neo-Ustasha ideologies represents a particular danger as it leads to the relativization and distortion of well-documented crimes. This makes the work of historians, educators, and institutions all the more important. The preservation of historical truth is not only an academic duty, but a moral imperative and a prerequisite for stability of our societies. In this regard, the example of Israel's academic and educational institutions and their unwavering commitment to Holocaust remembrance and education stands as an inspiration. Through museums, research centers, and commemorative initiatives, they have demonstrated how a society can responsibly safeguard the memory of its past while educating future generations. The international presentation of this book, particularly here in Jerusalem, carries special significance. It demonstrates that the memory of these events transcends national boundaries and belongs to the collective conscience of humanity. Bringing this topic to global audiences contributes to a deeper understanding of the suffering endured in the past of Europe and reinforces the universal importance of confronting hatred, intolerance, and violence. In addition to the academic sphere, it is equally essential that in the political and diplomatic arenas, we ensure that early recognition and unequivocal rejection of ideologies that draw inspiration from the darkest chapters of our past are rejected and timely identified. The timely identification and firm dismissal of neo-Nazi, neo-fascist, and neo-Ustasha narratives is not only a matter of historic responsibility, but a prerequisite for safeguarding fundamental civilizational values. In this context, silence or ambiguity can be as dangerous as open denial, which is why a clear, principled, and consistent stance is to prevent the normalization and spread of such destructive ideas. In this spirit, it is important to continue to honor the victims, not only through remembrance, but through our persistent commitment to the truth, dignity, and humanity. Because in the end, responsibility we share is simple, yet profound, to ensure that such tragedies are never forgotten, never denied, and never, ever repeated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foreign Minister, His Excellency Marko Đurić. And I also want to say, for anyone who hasn't seen it, you should look online and see his remarks in Hebrew, no less, yesterday in the meeting with our Foreign Minister, Gideon Saar, in which he expressed the very warm relations between Serbia and Israel, and we're very grateful for that.
One of the a notable absentee in our panel is Dr. Milan Koljanin himself, the editor of this book. Unfortunately, due to illness, he was not able to join us, but he did send us a recording. And let me see if I can get this working and have this on. This is Dr. Milan Koljanin, the editor of the book that we're all here to hear about.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good evening. At first, I'd like to apologize for my absence for health reasons. I wanted to join you, but it couldn't be done. But anyhow, I'm very happy for the opportunity to say something about the volume under the name, volume of documents under the name Ustasha Atrocities, 1941-1942, published by Archives of Vojvodina in 2020. And last year, this volume was translated to English, and nowadays we can talk about this important volume. And I think, and I'm very honored to be editor of this volume, and it was important, and this task was in the hands of my friend Nebojša Kuzmanović, the director of Archives of Vojvodina. And let me see about this volume. At first, who made this volume? This volume is volume of German documents, but from different sources. And who collected these documents? SS Major Ernst Weimann, who was in charge in Gestapo in occupied Serbia. He was in charge for settlement of Serbs from Ustasha state, and he was a liaison officer between German military and police in occupied Serbia. And why he collected these documents? Ustasha mass crimes and mass atrocities against Serbs in the summer and autumn 1941 could harm German interests. It was the first cause for collection documents. And German authorities knew that it could provoke a Serbian uprising, and it was in the summer 1941. It happened, and this mass Serbian uprising could harm German interests, and required more and more German engagement in Ustasha state. And it was the cause for collecting these documents. These documents were from different sources, from German military police forces, from Ustasha state, from their informants in Ustasha state, from Serbian sources, from Serbian refugees, from other Serbian sources, cross sources too, and very, very different sources. And we can recommend the picture of what happened during this period, thanks to these documents. Majority of documents were about Ustasha crimes and atrocities against Serbian population on Serbian ethnic territories and in the camps. But in the same time, part of those documents is very, very close connected with the Holocaust in Independent State of Croatia. Because Germans were interested for this issue too. And there are some reports about the course of the Holocaust during summer and autumn 1941. And these reports are very important. And what we can conclude from those documents concerning the Holocaust in the Ustasha state. At first, and the most important, the Holocaust was completely in the hands of Ustasha state, and mostly committed in Ustasha concentration and death camps at first, in the Camp Gospić, Pag Island, and then in Jasenovac for men, and other camps, Loborgrad, Đakovo, for Jewish women and children. In those camps, these Jewish women and children were together with Serbs, and they were suffering together, of course. But what is important, we can conclude what the Ustasha command in the camps wanted to do with those people. We can see the treatment of all of them, and some of those documents are important especially for all Ustasha camps, especially maybe most important the report of Karl Heger, commander of Loborgrad camp for Jewish and Serbian women and children, and some other documents are very important too, and some of them were connected with Ustasha atrocities again, Jews, not only in the camps but outside of them. Maybe most important among them is the report about slaughter of Jewish women and children on the Sava Bridge River in Brčko in December 1991, when 300 of them were slaughtered on the bridge. What we can say about other documents concerning Jews, their suffering were very strong connected with the Serbs in the camps and other, and their property were plundered by in the same time by Ustasha authorities, of course, and shortly we can conclude, and let me conclude. This volume is important both for the Serbian and for Jewish history in the Ustasha state, and I think it could be very useful not only for historian and for those sort of people, but for the broader audience. And let me conclude again. I thank you for your attention.
I want to thank Dr. Milan Koljanin and wish him well, of course, and thank him for his work on this remarkable book. Our next speaker is someone who's known to many people here and many watching at home, Dr. Efraim Zuroff, who opened the Simon Wiesenthal Center's Israel office 40 years ago. He was the center's chief Nazi hunter and director of its Israel office and Eastern European affairs until last year. We actually held a wonderful event for him here last year, celebrating his life and his work. Dr. Zuroff discovered the escape destinations of over 3,000 suspected Nazi war criminals all over the world and facilitated the exposure and prosecution of dozens of them. He is the author of 4 books translated into 15 languages and more than 500 articles on Nazi hunting, Holocaust history, and contemporary Jewish life and identity.
He's one of the leading spokespeople in the world on Holocaust-related issues and was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2008. And he'll be speaking to us this evening about the campaign to find and prosecute Dinko Sakic, who was the commander of the Jasenovac concentration camp. Zuroff.
Thank you, Paul. I'm very happy to be here and obviously support all the initiatives that are underway to document what happened during World War II. But I want to refer my comments. I want to tell you about something what's missing from all these wonderful presentations that we found till today. It's all about history, okay? And without the documents, there won't be any history, and it won't be very accurate history, as Foreign Minister George told us, and other people tell us, and I agree with them 100%. But that's only half the story. The other half is justice. I didn't hear a single word about justice. So I'll tell you a couple of stories. I was invited to speak about the Sakic trial, and I want to explain to you how Sakic was brought to, was extradited to Croatia, and what happened at his trial, something that I'll never forget as long as I live. I found out that Sakic, contrary to what most people thought, that he had come back to Croatia, was in Argentina. And my former colleague, Sergio Uida, who works for the Joint, he's the Joint Representative for Latin and South America, I told him, listen, try to find where Sakic lives. We found out that he was living in Argentina, as many of the Ustasha criminals were on the Underground Railroad from Croatia to Argentina. So Sergio teamed up with a very known Argentinian journalist called Jorge Camarasa, who unfortunately has passed away. And he was able to find where that Sakic was missing in a place called Santa Teresita, 300 miles south of Buenos Aires. And I want to read you what happened when he went to Sakic's door. So Camarasa knocks on the door, and someone comes to the door. Are you Dinko Sakic? Yes. Camarasa says, I believe that you were the commandant of the Jasenovac concentration camp in Croatia. Can I ask you a few questions? Sakic, by all means, come in. Camarasa is seated in Sakic's living room. Sakic, he says to Sakic, as a person who served as commandant of the Jasenovac concentration camp, how do you explain the terrible things that took place there? So Sakic said, Jasenovac was a penal colony, and all the people incarcerated there deserved to be there. It was actually a work camp where the Jews managed themselves. We never laid a hand on any of the prisoners in the camp. Very accurate, I would say. Okay, so Camarasa says there, but how do you explain the cruel atrocities which took place there, the terror, the executions? Sakic says, the people died a natural death. There was a typhus epidemic, for example, but there were no cremation ovens that killed anybody. I think that you are the one who does not understand. The real problem with Jasenovac was that we were not able to finish the job. I sleep like a baby. If I were offered the same post today, I would accept it. okay? That's one conversation. Now, what other people didn't know that while Šakić was in Argentina, he gave a very extensive interview to a Croatian magazine, journal called Magazine, in which he made the following comments. I regret that we didn't do all that is imputed to us, for had we done that, then today Croatia wouldn't have problems. There wouldn't be people to write lies. Two, Jasenovac was a legal institution based on law, where all those proved to have worked for the destruction of the Croatian state and who had been dangerous for public order and safety were interned. Three, there are no two states in the world that don't have prisons and camps, and somebody has to perform this thankless duty. Four, for the 100th time, I have to say there were no mass executions in Jasenovac. Considering the duration and the population of the camp, the death rate was natural and normal. At any time there were 3,000 inmates in the camp. Five, if we shot people, we did it on the basis of the law. I only want to tell you that the legal state and the rule of law were functioning. Six, Dr. Franjo Tuđman is, to put it metaphorically, on the top of the cathedral, and its horizons are wider and larger. Nobody in Croatia is unscholarly. He's also a Holocaust denier, and he blamed the Jews for inflating the number of victims from 1 million, Holocaust victims, from 1 million to 6 million. Seven, I'm proud of everything I did, and if I were offered the same duty today, I would accept it. Now, that helped us get him put on trial. Anyone who can hear, who could read these interviews, understand that this guy is lying through his, like, ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous about Jasenovac. Anyway, so then the question was where to seek the extradition, whether to Croatia or to other countries. In any event, the trial started on March 4th, 1999. Of course, Šakić claimed that he was sick, and that's why all these people who are being put on trial, all of a sudden they develop all sorts of illnesses. You understand? But 11 days later, the trial began, and it was a real history lesson, as a procession of survivors on the witness stand described in detail the horrors perpetrated in the camp. Anyway, there were all sorts of events that took place during the trial itself. One time, the Judge Tripolo, who did a terrific job, was in the corner of the courtroom speaking with someone, and some people who were friends of Šakić realized that he wasn't watching. So when his friends turned around, what does he do? What do they do? Like this. All right. Anyway, and one in another case, a young boy from Sarajevo named Jako Finci was sent to Jasenovac, and a couple of the kids of his age, teenagers, were forced to gather the bodies of prisoners who had been mutilated and killed by the Ustasha, to throw their remains into the Sava River. And Finci obviously didn't understand where he was, so he asked the guards, why is he doing this to us? So you know what he said? Because you killed Jesus. They're all Jews. All those people were Jews. So they were the ones who had to throw the bodies into the Sava River. All right. In any event, Šakić got the maximum judgment, 20 years in prison. And he had to pay a financial penalty for the murdering of at least 2,000 people during the months when he was head of the camp. That was about for 2 years. So I'll just tell you one thing, that for me, the fact that he was convicted made all the worth in the world. I cannot imagine a situation when some person like this, who did so much damage, so many injuries and deaths to innocent people, would walk out of and be acquitted. So, but anyway, one last story. There was an attempt by young Jews, teenagers, to escape from Jasenovac. And in the end, they caught them and they brought them back to Jasenovac. And they, of course, ordered to line up in the center of the camp. And Šakić went up and down, taking out at random, taking people out to be hung because of that. So one of the people, they just arrived from Sarajevo, these young people, and he asked the guard, "Why are you doing this to us?" So the guard said, "Because you murdered Jesus." Okay, so what happened? One of the people who that Šakić took out of the line, the one who was going to, one of the people who were going to be hung, was someone from Montenegro, a man named Milan Koljanin. He was the first person from Montenegro who was sent to Jasenovac. So he said to Šakić, "My tradition, I'm from Montenegro, and my tradition does not allow me to be hung." Šakić took out his revolver, shot him 3 times in the head, and of course he was murdered. After the trial was over, I happened to see someone who stopped me, and the tall gentleman, very well dressed, and he said to me, and I'll never forget it as long as I live, "I have only one word to tell you, Vala. Not for you, this trial never would have taken place." Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Efraim Zuroff. Thank you for your talk and also for your incredible work over the years, which we've had occasion to thank you on many occasions.
Okay, our next speaker is His Excellency Jovan Ćulibrk. He has been the Bishop of Pakrac in Slavonia, the Serbian Orthodox Church, since 2014. He attended postgraduate studies on Jewish culture here in Jerusalem at the Yad Vashem and Hebrew University. And he'll be speaking to us about Yugoslavia as the research lab for the term of genocide.
To the Agi Despota, Your Excellence, distinguished ambassadors and ladies and gentlemen, not only that I'm a bishop of Pakrac in Slavonia, but in fact a bishop of Jasenovac, which is something here in this company. I am bishop that is governing territory of Jasenovac, and I'm very proud here to tell you that we found the only remnant of the camp that was that served during the war as an Ustasha hospital. In fact, somewhere in the beginning of 1942, the Ustasha understood that war will take some longer time than expected, and that they will have a serious amount of wounded and Ustasha and ill Ustasha wounded coming only usually from the confrontation with the partisans from Kozara. That I'm very proud to be an offspring of that. So we found it, and it was the hospital where Milo Bošković served. Up to his, because and Milo Bošković was planning to make a revolution with a group of pharmacists and the doctors. So they were exposed and they were taken to the central camp, Camp 3, where Šakić was commander. So we found it, we bought it due to the help of state of Serbia, and we turned it into a museum, which is a unique place where one can see the original buildings of the camp, because Ustashi and then the new government destroyed completely the central Camp 3 that we consider Jasenovac. So today it's ours, and I'm very proud to say it. And we are not making counter memorial there. We are making a complementary memorial, because also the Roma community did the same. Now, עשיתי תואר שני פה באוניברסיטה העברית ובמרכז ביד השם עם פרופסור דוד בנקיר, זיכרונו לברכה, that makes me a Holocaust specialist. The Holocaust specialist. I wrote my thesis about historiography של השואה ביוגוסלביה. I was asked by Professor Bankir to do it because there was no book that one can use at the beginning of the research of the Shoah. During that time, I was welcomed as a brother to the Patriarchate of Jerusalem, and since then I'm not sure if I belong here more or to my native Serbian Orthodox Church. But what was at the time that I was speaking to Professor Bankir and so on, two things we concluded. First, that in Yugoslavia we need published sources on the Holocaust and of course of the genocides that they took part of the time. And the B, that Dr. Milan Koljanin is at the time was probably the only person capable of making a synthesis of the Holocaust of the Shoah by Yugoslavia. The later, the former one was Menachem Shelach, who sadly died in 1990, and his book on Yugoslavia was published in 1994, but honestly was outdated already at the moment when it was published. Not to mention that his book about Jews in fighting the Nazis was based on a very, very bad idea of 7 offensives in the Second World War and so on. So it needed updating, and we were tried for 8 years, Professor Bankir and me, to update the Menachem Shelach's book, and we didn't manage, honestly speaking. But there is one thing that now only Israelis are facing, and I had a breakfast yesterday with my professor Simcha Epstein. I studied with him the history of state of Israel here at the university. Me and Natalie Portman, I have to say. And there is a famous Muslim leader in Serbia, and somebody asked me, and you, and also this not Koljanin, but the one who died, Zukorlić. Yeah? But Zukorlić also studied in the Middle East. Yes, his fellow students are now chased by Americans all over Iraq. My fellow student was not an important, so please. So what happened? Basically, and he told me something happened with the term of the Holocaust in Yugoslavia. Please do the research. So I did research, and the research is fascinating. So after the Second World War, of course, we had a definition of the Holocaust of the genocide by United Nations, 1948, and our representative there was Vladimir Dedjev, very close friend to Tito, who later became his enemy. So he returned to the country at the beginning of '80s when Tito died. Vladimir Dedjev belonged to a very vicious circle of Bernard Russell, and that established so-called Russell Court, because they were not satisfied with the genocide term as it was developed by United Nations, and Russell gave to Jean-Paul Sartre to develop new definition of genocide. So he developed a so wide definition of the genocide that even the smallest things can be a genocide according to that definition. So Vladimir Dedijer came to Yugoslavia at the time when finally the sufferings, the Holocaust, the genocide in the Second World War came to the public after Tito died. And he, as a specialist from Russell Court, and at the time he was suing United States for the genocide in Vietnam and the United States laws. It's a very important thing. Do not underestimate. So they decided to apply that definition to the Yugoslav intellectuals. So between 1980 and 1990, Vladimir Dedijer was the Pope of the Holocaust and the genocide research in Yugoslavia. And each Yugoslavian intellectual accepted his definition, not his, Sartor's, and the definition of genocide. So after 10 years, he published it together with Antun Miletić, book called Genocide Against Muslims in the Second World War. Okay, there were massacres, for sure, but it's as far from genocide. And then all these people that came from the Russell Tribunal, all those extreme left, took over the international court in Hague. If you trace the people who were working at the Russell Tribunal, we can easily see them going to the International Court of Justice in Hague, and especially to the Tribunal for former Yugoslavia. So this definition that was so widely, I have to say, perverted, was in fact definition that International Court in Hague used for former Yugoslavia. That's why Srebrenica is genocide according to that. But now, the same people and the same definition of genocide is, of course, happily at the same international court applied to Israel. So something that began as an intellectual bizarre let's say attempt to write something became a very powerful tool. For 10 years in Yugoslavia, old Yugoslavian intellectuals in the 80s do not consider UN definition as a real definition of genocide, but Sartor's definition. And they made whole mess, and of course, in the 90s, such a reform definition was really applied to the events in Yugoslavia, in Rwanda, of course, in Rwanda it was really, truly genocide.
The Americans don't want to say it's a genocide.
And
now they said it.
Now it's applied to Israel. So please, Israelis, pay attention, because my friend, Professor Epstein, told me from the moment that I heard that we are accused for a genocide, I remembered you. You told us 15 years ago that it will take place. So please, ladies and gentlemen, when something's happened in the Balkans, pay attention. In the beginning of 19th century, Jews from the Balkans begin to speak about return to Zion. Some of them never paid attention, and now it's too late for it. The Jews are back. But I don't understand. I don't that somebody will leave. I hope that we have a serious Holocaust research here, and but as I told you, the Balkans are very often the laboratory of ideas, of things that used to happen. Everything began in the Balkan first, and then became the world event. I was joking for many things, but this is a very serious. And my great-grandfather was aide-de-camp of Colonel Apis. And recently, John Deutsch, former head of CIA, he was asked, is there a really deep state and what does it mean? I said, of course, remember Colonel Apis. Colonel Lapid created the assassination of transfer.
Thank you very much. If I'd known that you knew Natalie Portman, I'd have asked you to get on the phone and invite her to join us. I actually had a conversation with someone recently about events happening in my old country in the UK, where you may be aware there's been an epidemic of anti-Semitic terrorism. And I remarked that it seemed that a lot of reading the media in Britain, it seems that a lot of otherwise intelligent people don't seem to know what either Zionism or genocide mean. In their remarks. Okay, last but not least, Mr. Alexander Nikolić, the Honorary Consul of the Republic of Serbia. He also serves as Director of the Representative Office of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Serbia and Israel. He's been awarded a certificate of appreciation for his extraordinary activity for strengthening the relationship between Israel and Serbia from the Knesset and from Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And also, in 2023, the decree of the President of the Republic of Serbia with the Order of the Star of Karađorđa, third class, for exceptional merits in developing relations with the State of Israel. And he'll be speaking to us on the topic of from the distortion of the Holocaust and genocide to the absurdity of victim apologetics. Alex. Thank you very much. Without him, this event would not have happened. So, Alexander.
Mr. Minister, Your Grace, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear Serbs, Jewish community from Serbia and Serbs in general. This is the very first Serbian event here, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah.
We are very grateful to you for being so thoughtful and so cooperative. And when we approached you both Dr. Zuroff and myself, everything really went smoothly. We are very grateful for that. I'll be shorter than the previous scholars and dear colleagues and friends. I would like to emphasize something that is less known even here in Israel. One of the most prominent scholars in the field of Holocaust, late Professor Judah Bauer, once said that if there is something even worse than the Holocaust denial, that is the Holocaust distortion. Talking about the today's agenda, and something that I would like to emphasize here is that how on earth a nation that was a victim of such a bestial genocide in the Independent State of Croatia throughout the World War II, together with the Jews and the Roma people, in a very short period of time became a victim, and even by himself actually entering apologetics when talking about what happened to himself only a few decades ago. Obviously, there are historical reasons for that, mainly belonging to the era of communist Yugoslavia, where the policy of brotherhood and unity, the concept of putting the past behind and actually talking about reconciliation, especially between those backbones nations such as Croats and Serbs within Yugoslavia, made a difference. And where was this distortion? On the first place, it was always and everywhere, from the monuments to the scholar curriculum written, victims of fascism or victims of People's Liberation Movement. Who were the victims? By whom and why? talking about the Jews and the Roma people based on racial laws, especially having in mind that this happened also throughout Europe, occupied parts of Europe, not only in the Independent State of Croatia, it was much less problematic because those were not the main elements of the Yugoslav Federation, not those major constitutive peoples. As for the Serbs, how can you create a country? How can you build up this brotherhood and unity if you are dealing with such a terrible past? It was only in 1966 that the first monument had been raised. Bogdan Bogdanovic's flower, stone flower, at the major site of the memorial park of Jasenovac. Now we can only imagine how crucial and critical first 2 decades elapsed and were wasted. Not talking only about the forensics, which is of course of the primary significance here, but that, you know, even the grandmothers wearing black were afraid of going and light the candles in the major scaffold of that most terrible concentration camp of Jasenovac, talking about Donja Gradina, because they were afraid of whom? They were afraid of security forces, OZNA, UDBA, mainly, very mainly of them, actually the Serbs by themselves. So we cannot bypass this period, too many decades, too long, too much of waste and damage. At Yad Vashem, at the Hall of Remembrance, the entire fire, and all official delegations are laying the wreaths. Among the 22 plaques, there is a name of Jasenovac. But who knows, even among the scholars here, significantly enough about Jasenovac. And even if you're talking about the common and collective memory of those that came here from the Balkans, we shall get much narrower to the areas of Krajina, Kozara, those parts of Bosanska Krajina that, in spite of everything, they lived with that. They were very much alone in that regard. And now I'm getting closer to the point of apologetics. No major PhD thesis, no significant scientific work or cooperation between the institutions or individuals between the countries for too many decades. And then all of a sudden, approaching the 90s, when the Serbs became aware of what had happened with the breakup of Yugoslavia, when they showed the interest in their recent past and what had happened to them, the surrounding area, especially the West, had a different agenda. Talking about genocide against the Serbs during the World War II was somehow in that kind of narrative, in collision, in very much one side and a not balanced mass media's presentation throughout the 90s. Today, even these days, whenever we try to organize such events that are purely scholar, pure science, talking about the archives as explained by the previous speakers, there is always a kind of anticipation, kind of blame that we're gonna do something manipulative, something malicious, talking about the politics, and trying to actually deal with our neighbors, politicizing the history. If on those monuments in the times of the socialist Yugoslavia were no spiritual, definitely not whatsoever, religious marks, not the faith of the Moses, not of the Christian Orthodoxy. This is the result. Now, all of a sudden, talking about the origins of Wehrmacht, Gestapo, Volksdeutschers, we are still somehow invited to deal with those apologetics, that we are not taking any kind of chance to do something that is not dealing with the subject itself. I'm so pleased that we are living in the times of the best bilateral relations between the Republic of Serbia and the State of Israel ever. We are very proud that our foreign minister is here. He made us very proud these days. Thank you so much, Mr. Minister, for that. This is the chance to speak out, to talk facts, to present archives. Our dear friend, Mr. Yochai Ben Gradalia, Director of the Archives at the National Library, is here. So I would like to finish by 3 simple messages. The first one is cooperation between the both relevant and competitive and competent scientific organizations, institutions, and individuals as for that subject. Second, cooperation in the field of education, learning from, as previously said, centers such as Yad Vashem, not only, but gathered at Bar-Ilan University, cooperating with you, with your esteemed center. And thirdly, of course, talking about the commemorations and being together where there are no compromises. We are not going to apologize for our forefathers, our grandfathers and grandmothers being slaughtered. We are proud. We are proud as the Jewish community of Serbia. We are proud as Serbs. And this is the way to speak proudly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alexander Nikolić. It's quite late. I did say at the beginning there'd be time for questions. There's not that much time, I'll be honest. But does anyone have a burning question? Burning question to ask our panel? Right, so in that case, I'm going to thank our esteemed panel very much for being here, for exposition on this really remarkable and important book. I very much second all that's been said about the importance of the relations between our two countries, made by Alex and certainly by the Foreign Minister who honoured us with his presence here today. Thank you very much for coming. And of course, the ambassadors, as at Their Excellency, the ambassadors of Serbia and of Bosnia and His Eminence as well. Thank you everyone for joining us, and good evening. Bye bye.